Good evening and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Eugene Chan. Our guest tonight is Mr. Simon Pei, who is the Commissioner of the Independent Commission Against Corruption, or commonly known as the ICAC. He was appointed to this position in July 2012 after being the Director of Immigration. We have invited Simon to tell us how ICAC is going to ensure that we have a fair Legislative Council election. Welcome, Commissioner.
Hi, Eugene.
For most Hong Kong people, once they hear the word ICAC, they will immediately relate to a scene in the movies whereby your investigating officers will go to suspect homes in early hours in the morning, knock on the door, take them back to your headquarters for further interrogation. And also, the other scene we will think of is the bright light, the table lamp shining at the suspect, and the infamous black coffee, should they request for it. Is it what ICAC does?
Well, you know, ICAC has, we call it a three-prong approach. So you have mentioned about the enforcement part. And in fact, we also have the education and publicity part, as well as the prevention part. So the three-prong strategy, we have three major areas of work, and they are working with each other to get a total result.
Right.
So this is very, very important because the three-prong strategy is still very effective.
Right. So that means whatever I've just mentioned about the movie scene is the right picture for the enforcement section.
Part of it.
Right. On a more serious note, I'm very proud to read that Hong Kong is ranked by the other international organizations. We are amongst one of the least corrupt places in the world, and I'm sure this is due to the good work of ICAC. But I know before the ICAC was established in 1974, Hong Kong wasn't the same. Can you briefly tell the viewers what was the situation then, and why ICAC was established at that time?
Yeah, in those days, I mean maybe the 1960s, 70s, corruption in Hong Kong was very bad, very rampant. And it affected every part of ordinary people's life. So you cannot get away from corruption in your life. And that also make people very angry about that. And one very famous case is Peter Gobber.
Right.
He was a very senior police officer. And while he was under investigation, he fled to UK. And that triggered off the anger among the people, and they came out to protest. And because the situation was so bad at that time, and the Hong Kong government at that time decided to establish a separate agency, that is ICAC, to deal with corruption issues. So on that basis, ICAC was established in February 1974.
Right. Commissioner, when you hear of the word independent, does it mean that is independent on its own, is not answerable to anybody, including government?
Actually, the basic law, Article 57, said ICAC function independently, and accountable to the chief executive. So ICAC actually is part of the government, but it is not cannot be interfered by anybody or government departments. And because we are accountable only to the chief executive, so other government officials, they cannot interfere with our operations.
Right. Commissioner, you know, in the past in Hong Kong, we had the past chief executive, and also the past chief secretary was also involved in some sort of corruption cases. And then, is it one of the rare things in the world that Hong Kong, the ICAC, does actually look at, will go for the case against even the chief executive or even chief secretary? Yes.
In some countries, maybe the anti-corruption agency cannot touch the people at the top.
Right.
In some other countries, maybe they can touch them, but sometimes I would guess it may be there is a political motive behind, and both are not good. So in the case of Hong Kong, we do it strictly according to the law.
Right.
There's no political motive behind anything.
Right. So, Commissioner, as you know, we're going to have our Legislative Council election coming out in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm sure, election is one of the work that ICAC has always been involved in to make sure it is clean and fair. And your theme is abide by the rules, support clean elections. So, how is the Commission going to ensure that, as the title of the show asks, this election is going to be fair and clean?
ICAC is the agency responsible for enforcing the ordinance, the Election Corrupt and Illicit Conduct Ordinance. And we have started very early since the election law was amended in LegCo. And because we know actually there was not much time between the close of nomination and the actual election. So we did early to do the education work, the publicity work. And now we have 153 candidates, and we would approach each of them to let them know we have some information, some booklet for them to know what they have to watch out, they have to pay attention to. Every small things in the course of election nearing.
So, Commissioner, this upcoming Legislative Council election will be the first large-scale election since the improved electoral system was carried out. Was effective in May, earlier May this year. What are the actual changes in the laws that will affect the election? Can you tell us?
Okay, I can tell you there are new offences in the amended election ordinance. One is 14(1)(a), which said anybody who willfully obstructs or prevent another person to prevent them from voting is an offense. Another offense is Section 27(a). It says any person who incites any other person not to vote or to cast an invalid vote. If he did it in public and openly, that is an offense.
Right. Commissioner, I thought whatever you just mentioned in terms of principle-wise, it has always been the case. We cannot ask people not to run or not running elections. So what are the real differences after the national security law has come in?
The national security law is, I think it does not directly touch on election.
Right.
And the amendment which I have mentioned in the election law is to ensure that the coming elections or the 3 elections, including the
upcoming chief executive election.
Including that, that will be run smoothly, and as you said, is fairly, and so that is the spirit of the amended ordinance.
Right. So, Commissioner, as you said, basically you cannot incite people not to vote or even cast a blank vote. But do you foresee challenges or difficulty in actually carrying out to make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, you may know that about 2 weeks ago we have arrested 3 persons
right.
because under the Section 27(a), because they reposted some material which incite people, which are allegedly
right.
incite people to not to vote or to cast a blank vote. And so this is something I think I think people should know, that we are really enforcing the law.
Commissioner, I mean, as you know, as I just mentioned about the national security law has come in, then how does the ICAC actually work with the National Security Department of the Hong Kong Police Force to ensure that it's going to be a clean election, because there's also other parts of that will be looked after by the police.
Okay, I think our responsibilities are different from that of the National Security Department of the police.
Right.
Of course, they have their responsibilities in the election, the whole election. So we are looking after the, as I said, the illicit conduct and the corrupt conduct. We are looking after that. So, of course, there are other areas of work concerning election that may be looked after by other departments, maybe the police. But we have a working relation with the National Security Department of Police. So if in case we encounter a situation, we can always cooperate with them.
Right. So thank you, Commissioner, for updating us. Maybe we'll go for a break, and don't go away. Welcome back. We have been talking with Commissioner Pei, who has briefed us on the importance of the role of the ICAC in the upcoming legislative election, and also the changes with the improved electoral system and the challenges. So, Commissioner,
yes.
In the first part, you have told us about the Legislative Council election. It is going to be the first major one after the improvement on the electoral system. And so far, you have contacted the 153 candidates and informed them what should be done and what should not be done.
Yes.
So I think the viewers will be interested to know, from your experience, what are the common pitfalls or the common breaches of the candidates or those who help them, the election helpers and the voters in the past, that they may inadvertently make the breaches, but they weren't intended to. Can you share with us some of the past cases so that everybody will be able to vote and then help their friend to be voted, but not getting into trouble?
Oh, okay. So basically, election in Hong Kong used to be relatively very clean. So we do not have much bribery case in the election. As you said, the most common pitfalls are the election expenses.
Oh,
because
okay.
The candidates or their helpers or their agents, that is quite common. They may miss out some expenses spent in the course of the election. So when they submit the election returns after the election to the registration and election office, they may be questioned about their expenses or what they have not reported in their return. Then the REO will refer the case to us for investigation. That is most common. And sometimes we have cases in that there may be allegation that the candidates use false information or misleading information in the course of election. This is also not as common as the election expenses, but every now and then we may see some cases like that.
Right. Since you mentioned expenses, something just came to my mind. I mean, I'm sure all of us will run into those candidates. And if they happen to be in a dinner or a meal, they will quickly say, all right, I cannot take any meal because it will be counted amongst the election expenses. Is it so detailed to the extent that they can't even have a meal with anybody?
I think it depends on circumstances, but usually I can see that candidates usually avoid this situation. Yeah.
Or how about public experiences? If I invite them to Straight Talk, can they come up?
I would think there's no problem, because there is no remuneration for them.
Right. Okay. And just now you mentioned that a couple of weeks ago you have arrested 3 persons that will be alleged could be affecting the elections. Is that all that you have received so far, the complaints? Any more complaints relating to the upcoming election?
Oh, actually, we have received complaints more than that.
Right.
And we are investigating the other complaints. And I would like to remind people that this election ordinance not cover only people in Hong Kong, but also people outside Hong Kong. So if people create any illegal, say for example, illegal posts or illegal appeals, inciting other people not to vote or cast blank vote or invalid vote, even though they are not in Hong Kong, they could still be liable to prosecution.
Right. So, Commissioner, if one of our viewers perceive that one of the candidate may not be doing the right thing, if they want to make a complaint to ICAC, do they have to have solid evidence before they approach you?
Oh, if they have suspicion and they think that someone may have already breached the law, they can always report to us, make a complaint to us. So there's no need. Yes, there's no need for them to make a judgment that whether there is enough evidence, things like that. Let us do that.
Right. So, Commissioner, maybe we take this opportunity to tell the viewers some simple messages for the upcoming election, because there are some changes in the election laws. So, what are the main things that we must be careful so that we won't breach the law?
As I said earlier, don't incite other people to not to vote or to cast an invalid vote, not to obstruct other people from voting. And I think these are two very important things because they are new offenses in the law.
So make sure, allow people to vote as their own wish.
Yes.
Yes. So maybe we'll move on to other areas of your work that, as you know, Hong Kong is a place that we all treasure the rule of law. And you know, in the past couple of years, which never happened before, some international organizations remarked that Hong Kong's rule of law has been worsened, especially due to the social unrest in 2019. What is your view on that?
Yes, but I think most of those criticisms are not fair to Hong Kong. Actually, we can see that in Hong Kong, the rule of law is still well maintained. And in the area of anti-corruption, we can still win very good ranking by international ranking institutions.
Right. So in other words, the ICAC can help to uphold and maintain the rule of law in Hong Kong.
Maybe, I hope so.
By doing a good job.
Yeah, we hope so.
Maybe I'm sure the viewers will also want to know, since ICAC has been a sort of a household name since 1974. There have been some high-profile cases in the news. So what is the current corruption scene in Hong Kong? How bad is it right now?
Hong Kong, the corruption in Hong Kong is well under control.
Right.
And actually the number of corruption complaints is coming down year after year.
Right.
And for example, this year, in the first 10 months, the number of complaints, this is a special year, the number of complaints is 15% higher than that of last year.
Right.
But last year was a special year. We believe because of the pandemic, the number of corruption complaints was very low.
Right.
So it's not a normal year.
Right.
But this year, I think situation is better and the economic activities are resuming. So we have more complaints this year. But compared to the first 10 months of 2019, the year before 2020, we are still somehow about 5% below that of 2019.
So the trend is still
basically
going down.
Is gradually coming down. So basically it's not only figures, but also we have information from other sources that basically is very well under control.
Right. So in terms of your work, I know you just mentioned you have a three-prong, either your enforcement, your prevention, and the education to the community. Do you see any challenges ahead so that you can continue to keep up this trend of downwards of complaints numbers?
I think there are challenges on every side.
Right.
And for enforcement work, there are always new tricks, and people have new patterns and new way of committing crimes.
Yes.
So we have to catch up with that, or we have to be even moving ahead of them. And on the education side, I think young people is one area we need to do more work. Because in our annual survey, we found that the tolerance of young people is a bit higher than the people of other ages. So this is a little bit worrying.
Tolerance meaning they are not as
tolerating corruption.
Right,
they can tolerate corruption more.
Right. Since you mentioned about young people, I'm going to ask you. With all the advent of technology and I mean every day everything is changing, is it making your work in the enforcement section, which I'm more interested in, is it more easier or more difficult?
Definitely becoming more and more difficult because after every investigation, every prosecution, the cases will be reported in the newspaper and people will know about the details. And those criminals will be wiser.
Right.
So he knows how to circumvent our investigation or not to let us have the evidence. So it's always getting more and more difficult. So we have to be smarter in our investigation. Of course, you have mentioned technology. IT is something we see it very important, and we need to catch up with the latest technology.
Right, Commissioner, I also understand, I'll be reading about ICAC. I know you have a special unit for establishing international liaisons with the counterparts who do anti-corruption. Can you tell us, I mean, what has been achieved by having this international liaison? Is it helping Hong Kong or helping others?
Actually, this is, I would say, this is a new attempt. It started in late 2017, and so far we have liaison with around 60 countries. I mean, the anti-corruption agencies.
Right.
And you know, the whole world, in the whole world, I think roughly, I think at least half of the countries, they are below the mark.
Right, I see.
Below the mark.
Okay.
So actually, many countries, the anti-corruption agency needs some help.
Right.
So we are happy to provide assistance to them mainly in capacity building for their officers.
Okay. So thank you, Commissioner, for coming to update us on the latest election changes. I'm sure all of us will want to support and embrace these new rules to ensure that Hong Kong will have a clean and fair election. And thank you for joining us. Have a good week and good night.